All right, so picking up on ideas of political economy, and we are looking at some of the basic terms of the economy, economics. You'll see one term down at the bottom of this chart that we have already seen before, which is regulations. But I wanted to include it again here because these are all kind of things that are aspects of what a state can put into place to, in some way, either restrict economic activity, redirect it in some way. And that might seem like, well, why would you want to do that? Well, sometimes that's not actually their goal. They're not trying to just impede economic activity, but the state has needs and it has things it needs to do. And the result, the spillover effect, is that it impacts the economy and the flow of goods, the exchange of goods, the operation of markets. And so we're looking at a few of these here. So first up, tariffs. Tariffs are really, they're taxes. That's pretty much all they are. But the specific thing about a tariff is that it's a tax on imported goods. So tariffs are taxes. Not all taxes are tariffs, though, right? Because you could have an income tax on your own population. That's not a tariff. A tariff is when you are importing something and you charge the person who is wanting to sell it in your country some fee and say, all right, you can sell that into our market here, our domestic market, but if you want to do that, you're going to have to pay a tariff, so 5%, 10%, whatever it is. And those are put in place for different reasons. Yeah, they do raise revenue, also used sometimes to protect domestic industry. And people argue about if they're good or bad, but at base, what a tariff is just a tax on imported goods. And so, quotas. Now, quotas are an example of the thing below that, which are non-tariff regulatory barriers, which is a broader category. But a quota is another form of a control on goods that are imported, things coming in. But it's not a tax. It's not an amount that you are, as a seller required to pay. Instead, it's just a restriction on the quantity of a good coming in. So, uh, back in the early 20th century, the United States put a quota on the amount of sugar that could be coming in from Cuba, for example. They said, we won't take any more than maybe 20% of our sugar supply as coming from Cuba. So it could be a percentage of a total, or it could be a quantitative amount, like you say, we will restrict that we won't buy any more than 1 million cars from Japan. And so that's the quota, right? And so there you go. It's quantitative. Think of quota, quantitative, an amount. And non-tariff regulatory barriers. These are restrictions that make it difficult or expensive for a product to enter a country or economy. So I, in the previous video, mentioned the idea of, okay, we're going to make different controls for how good a quality meat needs to be. And of course, these can be reasonable, but sometimes they might be unreasonable. You might say you have to meet all these bureaucratic hoops to be able to sell your product here as a way that we want to keep your product out of our country. And so let's see if I can think of another example. Like maybe steel has to be made to a certain specification that whatever the percentages are, and some degree of purity. Maybe about oil, it has to have a certain purity rating to be able to make it into the economy. And so any sort of restriction that is not related to tariffs and quotas could fall within this as well. But notice non-tariff regulatory barriers are, it's a broader category. Anything that makes it tougher to sell a product in a country or economy. And then regulations we saw before. Regulations are just the rules and order set in place. I mentioned that, that meat restriction would be an example. There could also just be things like a way you have to do things in order to sell in a place. So, how your forms need to look, the signatures you need to get, different approvals from different government bodies, these kinds of things. So anything that is kind of about following rules, following order, That would be an example of a regulation. Okay, so I'm going to close this video by looking at markets and property in a little more detail. We've already heard those words, but just going to elaborate on them a bit here. And notice what it says about markets. Communities of buyers and sellers interacting through economic choices they make. So this is choices of both, right? And what's interesting there is prices are developed by millions of individuals. There is an exception to this, which when you look at a strict communist type system, socialist system, use those interchangeably um, in this case, we call that a command economy or centrally planned economy. And in that case, the government does try to sort of say, here's how much of a thing we want to make and how much it ought to cost. But that really doesn't work very well. And so, ordinarily, in a market system, which some people think you should have more or less government intervention in it, but in any case, prices are developed by millions of individuals. And what's pretty fascinating is even in the production of a single product, you have a lot of actors along the way, a lot of different firms and companies and individuals involved in even producing that product. So I'll have you guys watch this video, or iPencil, or at least a short clip of it, that I think is pretty interesting. I hope you do too. Um, and yeah, it just shows how we should really appreciate even the simple things that we own and really everything that went into making those things, which often we can miss. And so, yeah, but basics here, sellers seek to create products that will be in demand. Buyers seek to buy the best or the most goods at the lowest price. So they're kind of, at odds with each other. They have different goals, right? A seller wants to make money, a buyer wants to save money. And markets are simply the medium. And meaning the medium means the kind of the way that this happens. The kind of the place, but it's a figurative place where those two uh, camps interact, the sellers and the buyers. And markets do emerge spontaneously and are not easily controlled. So this means, just in the flow of, hey, I come up with something to sell and I look for people to buy it. If I price my item, maybe I come up with a product that I think is the greatest thing in the world. And I'm like, this thing is worth easily $100 per widget. We'll say it's a widget, right? But then I go out there and try to sell it. And what happens? I discover, you know what? People aren't willing to pay $100 for my widget that I'm selling. So instead, I say, oh, well, what if I sell it for $70? And then I start to sell a few, but I realize it's still not selling as many as I'd like. But then I start selling them at $50 each, and all of a sudden, I start selling lots and lots of them. So the market kind of regulates itself, and it emerges spontaneously. It regulates itself spontaneously. It's not easily controlled. An example here would be that in the United States, back in the 1920s, there was a period of time called Prohibition, where alcohol was actually banned completely in the country. It was illegal. And yet, people still bought, sold, and consumed alcohol, even though they weren't supposed to, right? Because they created what we call a black market, which means a market that exists that is illegal, right? And black markets can exist in other things too. Um, Obviously, things that we kind of tend to think of as like negative, like drugs and that kind of thing. But yeah, but even just anything where you're trying to get around government regulations, restrictions, that can be a black market. And then, yeah, and a state could also set a price floor, like a minimum wage, but there are ways to get around that too, like hiring illegal workers, right? Who may be willing to work below that wage just because that may be the only way they can get a wage at all. So, but that said, even, most of the time people recognize that the state's role is helpful, that it does do things that it needs to do. And so I'll give a couple examples. So I realized I might have cut my voice off there. clipped it a little short. But in any case, I lost my place, sorry. Market forces typically require the state to enforce contracts, sanction activity, and regulate supply and demand where necessary. And so, yeah, they can intervene. They can try to, maybe they feel like there should be a higher minimum wage. It's usually generally observed, but people can still attempt to get around it. But one essential function that people agree upon in terms of what a state ought to do is ensure fairness when it comes to buying and selling, when it comes to markets. That no one is being cheated, right? There's no fraud going on, that sort of thing. And then similarly, our second look here is at the word property. And this is something where people say a state should be seeking to protect property rights to make sure that they're secure. So if someone has legitimate claims to ownership of something, it's the state's role to protect that, right? To protect that property. Most people would believe that. Um, and the state can own property as well, and they can also set very clear terms on what how property is structured. Like for example, maybe they own all of the airwaves, and then radio stations rent different like frequencies to be able to air their signal at. So they do interact with property in that way. But again, the goal most people would see in both markets and property for the state would be ensuring fairness and that kind of thing. So, um, yep, that's pretty much it for now. There's some more concepts uh, in this idea of political economy, but I'm going to save those until we meet together.